Well, are you excited? Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom's out later this week. Surely you're all going to watch it and it's going to make $1 billion. Anyway, I'm Mick and you're watching my YouTube channel, Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. Welcome, welcome, welcome. At the tip of the week where Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be released. And the first movie was certainly released to more fanfare. But it seems like the same thing that happened back then is kind of the same kind of environment and atmosphere that this film surrounds itself in. Because the first Aquaman, unfortunately for that film, well, it didn't matter in the end. It came after one of the most controversial situations in movie history, and certainly DC movie history, and that was Justice League. People were predicting gloom and doom for this movie. They expected it to fail as hard as Justice League BVS kind of didn't fail from a certain point of view, but didn't make the money the studio wanted. And Man of Steel, the studio wanted and needed it to make more money, and it didn't. But surprisingly, the first Aquaman became the only DCEU movie to make $1 billion. Not a Superman movie, not a Batman and Superman movie, which is a surprise, not a Suicide Squad movie, which you wouldn't expect to make $1 billion, although that movie did quite well. Wonder Woman. You'd expect a Wonder Woman movie to make $1 billion, especially the first one, it was so good. You'd expect that movie to make $1 billion before an Aquaman movie, because Aquaman was a joke before Jason Momoa was cast as that character. You know, a Justice League movie. You'd expect the Justice League movie to bring in about $2 billion before you'd expect an Aquaman movie to make $1 billion. But no, the movie coming after Justice League was the movie that made $1 billion. I really liked the first Aquaman movie. I thought it was a brilliant movie. I think everyone, including Jason Momoa, was surprised the movie did so well. And Momoa is not shy about the tepid potential response of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. He was asked if he would like to play Aquaman again. He said it's very unlikely. He doesn't believe this movie will be successful. Even the actor, before the movie comes out, is not expecting. He said it's not looking good. Have you ever heard an actor prior to a movie being released saying that? You should be positive. This is the thing for me. I don't believe anyone at that damn effing studio even wants Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom to be successful. Now, let's not get it twisted. This film was never ever going to be successful because of the Amber Heard situation. Now, whether you're pro or anti-Amber, that's just the fact of the situation. The previous DC film president, basically trying to remove Amber Heard, saying her chemistry with Momoa wasn't very good. Now, we could see that her chemistry with Momoa wasn't great in the first film. That's actually a true thing of Hamada to say, but I think he was being disingenuous. He just was looking for a reason to bin her because she was a problem. Now, Amber Heard was clever enough to manipulate a situation where she stayed. Now, from her own point of view, you can't blame her for wanting to stay in such a high-profile movie. Now, it's not going to matter anymore. Amber Heard is actually a really good mirror. She is, surprisingly. Considering her lack of acting ability, we should say that. I think she's been in anything she's been in for her looks rather than her acting ability. But James Wan was able to, manipulate a false chemistry between Heard and Momoa. I do believe that James Gunn and DC Studios and the rest of them don't want this movie to be successful. It was pretty clear from the beginning of his tenure as co-CEO of DC Studios that Gunn didn't like the casting of Momoa as Aquaman. But it's very, very interesting because nobody seems to have ever asked him a simple question. He gets asked a lot of questions and he'll answer the easy ones. But here's the hard one. Will there be an Aquaman at DC Universe? Will there be a new Aquaman? Will there be a Jason Momoa Aquaman? I think it's pretty clear there won't be a Jason Momoa Aquaman. And from the first day of him arriving as co-CEO of DC Studios, he was hinting, and Momoa were hinting, about Momoa playing Lobo. Now that is really exciting for me. I love Lobo, and it's clear that Momoa loves Lobo and would like to play Lobo. He's going to play Lobo. It's obvious. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not fucking Nostradamus for saying that he's going to play Lobo. We all know he's going to play Lobo. But I think that was the carrot to, sneer Momoa away from wanting to continue to play Aquaman. And I think there's been some bad blood between James Gunn and James Wan. In an interview for Total Film Empire magazine, he said about, that James Gunn had given him some notes and he didn't mind some tips. He goes, but at the end of the day, it's his movie. We spoke about that several months ago on this very platform. And that was Wan publicly saying, don't interfere with my movie. It's clear from the terrible TV spots we're seeing that they did interfere with his movie. All the jokey shit we're seeing. Because I have seen this film, I have seen a test screening of this film, and ultimately, it's not a bad movie. It isn't as good as the first movie, but it is a Wrath of Khan movie, which was my interest level for it, and definitely Black Manta is a brilliant character, because there's a logic to this guy. You let my dad die. And that was very interesting in the first film, because from a certain point of view, you can say that Arthur was wrong to let him die. But Arthur's got a point. You were killing a bunch of these innocent people who didn't ask to be killed or put in danger, right? You and your dad did that. Why should I save your father's life? Now, Superman would have, but Superman has a different mentality to Aquaman in the DCEU. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom isn't a bad movie. The problem with the film, from my experience of seeing the test screening, and I don't know what kind of cut that we're all going to get at the end of this week, but basically to me they've just swapped Mera for Orm. Basically, instead of running off on an adventure with Mera like Aquaman was doing in the first film, they basically say, well, it's Orm's turn now to have an adventure with Aquaman. So in terms of that element of the film, it's pretty much rinse and repeat. There's nothing really changing of the wheel or groundbreaking or lighting the touch paper here. It's the same movie with a different character sharing the adventure with Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. But I don't believe that anyone at DC Studios, especially James Gunn, wanted this film to succeed. And I said this a few months ago. If this film succeeds, which it's clearly not going to succeed, they would have a difficult situation because they don't want Momoa as Aquaman. They don't want that. He's going to continue with certain other things from the DCEU, certain other castings, like his own castings, like Peacemaker and stuff like that. But, he definitely didn't rate the casting of Momoa as Aquaman. And Gunn needed to find a way to lure Momoa away from that role because Momoa was very, very proud of Snyder casting him as Aquaman. So the Lobo thing certainly is something that's going to happen. And in an interview promoting Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, using the word promoting very, very loosely, he did say that, James Gunn and Safran love him, and he's pretty sure he's going to remain. Now, we heard similar things from Zachary Levi during the promotion of Shazam! Fury of the Gods. He was saying things like, I'm good friends with Peter Safran, but I think that Momoa is staying. Now, just changing the subject for a few seconds, has Levi got any chance of remaining as Shazam? Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. It's not something that I would want. I don't even think we need to think about Shazam in the DC universe for now. I've had my bucket full of Shazam. He's just not a very relatable character. You could make him relatable, but it can't be Levi. It has to be all this big thing, one actor as the kid and, another actor as the adult. It is kind of the way it is. You couldn't have the kid as Shazam. But I think the way they did it in the original comics was the best. He's a kid. then he's this hulking kind of Superman type of character. But they went towards the big angle. And it kind of worked in the first film, but in the second film, I think people, and I, certainly tired of Levi and his performance as Shazam. 1 minute he's jokey, 1 minute he's serious. You don't know where you are. So for me, Levi needs to be out as this character. If they're going to use this character again, if they're going to use a new Black Adam, they need to think again. But again, I don't think this is something we need to concern ourselves with. But yeah, for sure, I don't think they want Momoa to continue as Aquaman, and he won't. And they'll be quite happy that this film is going to fail now because they're resigned to it failing. But it's interesting. The numbers do seem a little bit better, for example, than the numbers we got on the opening launch for Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash and Blue Beetle. I think there will be a little bit more interest in this film than there were in those others. Not that much more, but for me, I'm more excited for the release of this film than I was those films. But clearly, this film isn't going to do much past the opening weekend, and that's a shame. And I'll tell you for why. The reasons that Zack cast Jason was the potential of this character being kind of a gladiator. And I think it's a shame, because I would have loved to have seen an Aquaman movie directed by Zack Snyder and maybe written by Terrio or even Nolan and Goya. I think one of the mistakes of the DC Extended Universe was that they didn't stick with Nolan and Goya as the writers of the main stories. So imagine, so we had Man of Steel, and I said yesterday, the reason Man of Steel is my favourite Snyderverse movie is because Snyder is sticking to what he does best, which is directing, and Nolan and Goya are the ones who crafted the story. And considering they wrote the Dark Knight trilogy stories, it makes sense, right? And Man of Steel has a pretty solid story and premise. Maybe Goya got a bit lost at times, but I think with Nolan and, you know, his production company was the only one involved in Man of Steel, Syncope, right? Is that how you say it, or how you say it, right? But that was removed during BVS, which means that Nolan had no involvement. He was a producer, but it doesn't mean anything. I think he's an executive producer with his wife, Emma. But what killed the DCEU was Nolan not remaining. Imagine this, a Batman and Superman movie, or even better, an Affleck starring Batman movie in the second movie after Batman. After that, you know, so basically we have Man of Steel. Instead of Batman versus Superman, we actually have a Batman movie with the story crafted by Nolan and Goya writing the story. It would have been poetic considering that Nolan and Goya did the Dark Knight trilogy, and it would have been interesting. But here's another issue which I spoke about years ago, months ago. I've spoken about this a lot. I always said that Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy should have been the beginning of the DCEU, and they should have used those 3 films as an entry point to continue that, rather than starting again with Man of Steel. Man of Steel and Henry Cavill could have been part of the Dark Knight universe, right? Considering Nolan and Goya were there, I never understood the attitude from Nolan. You know, I don't want my Batman involved in this universe. That was always weird to me. And I think the casting of Ben Affleck, a new Batman, so soon after having a trilogy with Christian Bale, was part of the problem why his Batman didn't really work. And there's many, many reasons. I mean, people love Affleck as Batman. We must say that. But I think the universe would have had a head start over the MCU as well. If we were spinning off the Dark Knight trilogy, it would have worked a hell of a lot better. So that was a big mistake, considering Nolan and Goya were already involved. But imagine this. I'm going away from my original point. I do that. You know me well enough. But yeah, you could have a Batman movie where the story is crafted by Nolan and Goya. You could have a Wonder Woman movie where the story is crafted by Nolan and Goya. An Aquaman movie crafted by Nolan and Goya and directed by Snyder. So imagine Wonder Woman, Batman, and Aquaman. Stories crafted by Nolan and Goya, but the movie's directed by Zack Snyder. Like Man of Steel, it would have made sense. It would have had consistency, but they didn't do that. And that's the problem. That's the issue. And, this is one of the many issues why the DCEU didn't succeed. I mean, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is the final movie in the DC Extended Universe, and there's no pomp, there's no circumstances. I mean, you wouldn't want to celebrate the end of it, but you'd want to climax it in a way, but it's not going to have any of that. It's all very sad, but it's not even the real DCEU. It's just a bunch of films going on and on. James Gunn was going on why the DCEU didn't succeed. He doesn't have the first clue why it didn't succeed. He wasn't here. We were as fans. We witnessed it. You had one vision, right? This is why it went wrong. You had the vision of Nolan and Goya. Then you had the vision of Snyder with BVS, right? So you had Nolan and Goya. Then they kind of left, right, mysteriously. I think it was the failure of Man of Steel to make the money for the studio that they wanted. That's why they went. Then you've got Snyder's total vision for BVS. Snyder's vision for Justice League. And then they bring in Johns and Berg. So we've got their visions, whatever they were. And then they bring in Hamada, which is just a guy to do things cheaply. He has no idea about good storytelling. He has no idea about DC Comics. So it went from bad to worse. They kept on changing things. They didn't stick to what they started with. But ultimately, we know if you want a mainstream universe, probably Snyder isn't the right person to go with. And you ask the question, is Christopher Nolan the right man when you're looking for something a bit mainstream? Because Nolan's knowledge base of DC was minimal anyway. And this is why he brought in David Goyer to help him craft Batman Begins in the first place. So a lot of mistakes were made, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be the final mistake. And then James Gunn, we hope, can cook. But who knows? As much chance of succeeding as he has in failing. But certainly for me, Gunn never wanted this movie to succeed, and he never wanted Momoa to continue as Aquaman. Now let's stay on the subject of DC Universe and James Gunn. He's been doing a lot of talking, hasn't he? And you know what? I pretty much can understand most of the stuff he says, but he is confusing people. And he doesn't understand, or maybe he's confusing people as part of the hype. But yesterday, he posted a picture from Tom King's graphic novel. I'm not sure which one, but it had some artwork of Superman and Wonder Woman. Clearly, he's hinting in this universe, Superman and Wonder Woman will have a big connection. So, it's pretty clear that Wonder Woman will play a big role in DC Universe. Now, I wasn't sure if she would. I know we're getting Paradise Lost on HBO or Max, or whatever they're calling it today. But that's a prequel. We don't see Wonder Woman in that. But we still don't have any real clarification, considering he's hinting a big future for Superman and Wonder Woman in DC Universe, of who's going to be playing Wonder Woman. He's been asked, he's kind of said it's Gal, but he hasn't sounded wholehearted with those responses. So what we need from James Gunn, we need to know if Gal is playing Wonder Woman. Gal said earlier this year, her, James and Peter are going to develop a Wonder Woman movie together. But then the Hollywood Reporter or Variety, or both of them, I can't remember which now, said that there's no plans in the future to actually make a Wonder Woman movie right now. So that's what they said. So again, people are getting confused. And Gunn wouldn't answer that question. He answers the easy questions, but the difficult questions he won't answer. We have no clarification of Wonder Woman's future in DC Universe, but still, he's posting a picture of Superman and Wonder Woman. Do you see how you're confusing people, James? And this is the problem. These are the issues that you are creating, have created from day one. We need to know. Is she going to have her own movies? Is she just going to be, as you put it, cameo porn? I don't know what you're planning here, but we need to know who's playing Wonder Woman. If it's Gal, fair enough, but we need to know. For me, it makes little to no sense whatsoever for Gal Gadot to continue as Wonder Woman. I believe we need a new Wonder Woman. And it's interesting, isn't it? Who would we go with? I mean, look, there's lots of options out there. Maybe an unknown actor would be even better. But it's just a confusing situation. I can't sit here right now and say to you, oh, Gal Gadot's definitely going to continue as a Wonder Woman. She hasn't helped that situation by her stance on the Israel-Palestine situation. And I don't really want to go into that here, but she hasn't helped. Because when you take a side, and you can understand the side that she's taken, considering she was an Israeli soldier, right? I get it. But that's the problem with public figures today, with Hollywood today. They talk too much. And what you do is you make James Gunn's and Peter Safran's job a lot harder, because it would be better if you just shut the F up about real life issues. Have dinner parties, talk about your opinions there. But these are, these are fragile world issues that you shouldn't be coming out with publicly. And, anyway, I don't really want to go into that further at the end of the day. And I don't really want to talk about my views about it either, because we're here to talk about entertainment, TV and movies. And today we're talking about DC. But she hasn't helped her potential future as Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman loves everybody. Wonder Woman doesn't take sides. Wonder Woman is a hero. And that's the point. Because Wonder Woman isn't an Israeli. She's a Palestinian. She's from, she's from Fantasy Island. She's from Themyscira, and that's what this is what Christopher Reeve used to speak about. This is what Henry Cavill used to speak about. It's important that you're different when you become Superman or Wonder Woman or one of these characters, that you actually take that responsibility. Chris Reeve did it. Henry Cavill did it. Tom Welling did it. In a way, it's unfair, but you've got to be, you've got to conduct yourself in a certain way. And in this context, that Gal Gadot just hasn't conducted herself in the right way. So, as I say, I can't sit here and tell you whether Gal Gadot's going to continue as Wonder Woman or not, because I'm just as confused as you are. James Gunn has never really clarified this situation. He hasn't said she's not, he's kind of said she is, but he doesn't feel like a man who definitely wants Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. And maybe he doesn't want Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Maybe he just doesn't know how to broach the subject. In terms of what we were talking about earlier in Lobo, I think Jason Momoa as Lobo will be confirmed in the next few weeks. I think once Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom comes out, flops, maybe in the middle of its run, to distract from that, they'll probably announce it, because we all know he's playing Lobo. There's no ifs, there's no buts. He is playing Lobo, and he's probably going to be in Superman Legacy. That would make sense. Maybe he will, maybe he won't be. But for me, it would make sense if he is in that movie. And Jason Momoa as Lobo will be great hype and even great self-marketing for Superman Legacy. But at this moment in time, we are confronted with two different types of fans when we go online. So you have the shills, who were shilling Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Blue Beetle, the Flash movie. What happened? Barely none of them went to see the movie and only watched it on Max, telling us how brilliant it was. Bit late, you shills. Why didn't you go and support the movie when it was in theatres? Because you're not the people you claim to be. And then on the other side of it, we've got the Snyder fans who despise James Gunn and want him to fail for obvious reasons. It's a bit like politics right now. You've got the really far left and the real far right, and the other voices have been silenced. This is like DC fandom. This is like most fandom today. The loudest voices are the extremists, while, us people who just want to see a good movie and want DC to be great are silenced, and there lies the problem. The shills are not the answer to our fandom, and I don't think the Snyder fans are the answer to our fandom either. but there's a lot of good fans out there who are being silenced out of fear by these two sides. Balanced people who will be constructively criticising but also being positive for good reasons, not to shill. And that's where we are today in our fandom. But James Gunn is in charge now. He is at least trying to construct something. Whether that's successful or not, I don't know. But I would like some clarification on who's playing Wonder Woman. Is it Gal? Does she get movies? Is she just going to be cameoing? Because that picture he showed of Superman and Wonder Woman is a big deal. It hints to a big future for these two characters. It's something we really didn't get in the Snyderverse, in the DCEU, because that was more focused on Batman and Wonder Woman. Personally, I prefer the dynamic between Wonder Woman and Superman. I find that more interesting. I find them equals, and I think there's some very interesting dynamics. Whether they're going to be friends or if they're going to be lovers, and that will be interesting if, in fact, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane isn't a love interest for Superman at the beginning, and actually he started having a romance when we get into Superman Legacy with Wonder Woman. That will be interesting. But, as I say, it doesn't make any sense that Gal Gadot continues as this character. And I don't know why James didn't knock this on the head from the very beginning. But if she is still Wonder Woman, fair enough. I mean, my hunch, my gut feeling is that she's not going to be his Wonder Woman. But who knows? As I say, I can't tell you with my hand on my heart and say, oh yeah, I know what's going on here, baby. But yeah, he doesn't help himself. As I said the other day, he just digs himself a hole, then he fills it back in again. It's like when we had that mistaken announcement from the Hollywood Reporter about Pom Clef is her name, the girl who was in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 3. And they confirmed that she was going to be in Superman Legacy, but she wasn't. He starts saying, well, I never said she was going to be in Superman Legacy, but you were throwing so many big hints and you weren't exactly accurately portraying where she's going to land in DC Universe, because he confirms she's going to be somewhere in DC Universe. Because you didn't clarify yourself, you confused people. And then you don't understand when people are confused, and your shills and supporters, these DC shills, seem to back you up with no logical standpoint. The problem is with James Gunn, and it's always been the way, he talks too much. And he's typical of New Hollywood today. They just don't know when to shut up. They don't know when to zip it. And that's the problem. They get themselves in trouble, like Miss Rachel Zegler didn't know when to keep her mouth shut. Then she had to get told off by the CEO of Disney, and now she's going back on what she originally said. Now everybody dislikes the girl. She's being bullied. And I don't like to see that, but your arrogance, Rachel, is the reason that you're there. Now, in terms of James Gunn, his heart is in the right place. He likes talking to fans. He likes answering questions. I'm sure what he's attempting to do is clarify situations, but from my point of view, in my eyes, he's just making the situation much worse. But it's very important now, from my standpoint as a DC fan, that I know who's Wonder Woman, because that picture you released of Wonder Woman and Superman says there's a big future for Wonder Woman and Superman in your universe. And, I wasn't sure if Wonder Woman was going to play a big role in this universe, but from that hint, it looks like she is. And that's good, because I love Wonder Woman, and I love the relationship between Wonder Woman and Superman in Bruce Timm's animated Justice League series, both of them, and the movies. So that's important to me as a DC fan, but we do need some kind of clarification on who's playing her, because right now, I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue, you don't have a clue, it's a mystery. So that's something I'd like announced before the end of this year, before the end of December. I don't want to wait anymore. It's about time we knew who's playing Wonder Woman. I don't even know why it's a secret. Now, if you're not going with Gal, and you're auditioning and you haven't cast a new Wonder Woman, that's fine. But we need to know one way or the other what's going on. And I don't really see a reason If it is Gal, why you won't just tell us? The way you've done it, James, makes it feel like you really don't want her as Wonder Woman, but maybe other people in the studio do.